Hi folks, welcome to my video overview of how to prepare case number 4. Congratulations, you've made it to the final stretch. Case 4 is where you put everything together from your previous cases 1 through 3 and you add the implementation plan section to it. So what I have in front of you is the instructions for preparing case 4, which are posted in doc sharing. The outline for the entire senior project is provided at the top part of the document. So you have your case statement, then the next section is mission and vision evaluation, followed by milestones, the EFE matrix, the IFE matrix, the SWOT analysis, the industry analysis, the financial analysis, your competitive strategies with your QSPM matrix and your recommended strategy selection. And then in case 4, you add the section of your implementation plan, and finally you've been keeping a reference section. You've been building that as you go along, but of course you're going to finalize that, and if there's anything new to add to it, you'll add it to it here. So I'm scrolling down to look in particular at the details of what's in the implementation plan section. Also to remind you that you can, at this point, you should definitely look at the senior project grading matrix to look at the criteria used to evaluate every single section in your senior project, including this one. And I'm sure familiar with that document by now. But essentially what you have done to this point is you have done a situation analysis, including all your environmental assessments. You've figured out what the case statement is. You've set some long-term objectives. You've selected a strategy which will help the company realize that those objectives and satisfy the case statement. So in case 4, you're getting into more of the details of how that strategy is going to be implemented. So it's a detailed tactical action plan, and in addition to the plan of answering sort of the questions of who will do what, when, where, and how, you're going to give an estimate of what that plan is going to cost and what returns to the company, financial returns you expect your plan to bring. And you're also going to show that you know how you're going to finance it. If you can finance it from working capital, that's perfectly fine. If you need to raise capital, long-term capital for that, then you would want to include an EPS, EBIT chart that we did like in the short exercise 5 and apply it to show how you're going to raise money to fund your strategy. So let's take a look at what goes into this in particular. In that opening paragraph, I mentioned that you should include how you're going to finance your recommended plan. Now, I mentioned the pro forma income statement, and that's a good thing to have. You should include that. Now, the break-even analysis, that's optional. That sometimes can build a strong case, but that's your judgment call as to whether or not you're going to use that break-even analysis. You may even decide that you want to try some kind of payback analysis. That part is not required. The wording in the instruction document makes it look that way, but that is not required, but it may strengthen your presentation if it makes sense to include it there. The EPS EBIT chart is required if you cannot fund the strategy through working capital. So if your company happens to be rich with working capital, then you wouldn't need to include that chart. So let's take a look at what I have specified as in items A, B, and C down here. Here's some tips for developing your implementation plan. Look at what you're doing and how the different functional areas are going to be affected in terms of what they need to do to implement the plan. So what does marketing have to do? What does operations need to do? What do the finance folks need to do? So you want to develop steps in all of those areas that are going to be required to implement your strategy. Second, you want to think about your analysis and address some of the specialized functions. For instance, the organizational structure, is that going to work as is, or do you need to perhaps reconfigure things? What about the organization's culture? How are these issues of change going to be affecting the culture? In that, you may want to also include, in fact, it would be a good idea to consider social responsibility and ethics and how that all fits in. Consider human resources management, research and development, management information systems. Include all of these functions that are essential to implementing your plan so that you can achieve your long-term objectives. In these functional areas, you may also consider developing some annual objectives so that, if you remember from Chapter 5, we talked about long-term objectives, and then we funneled it down into annual objectives, which are almost subsets of the long-term objectives. So the functional areas need to set some long-term objectives. So you want to think it through to that level of detail. And again, as I mentioned before, throughout, answer the questions: who will do what, where, when, and how. If you think it through to that level, you've covered the implementation plan in enough detail. And so that's essentially this last step of the senior project, and of course to update your references. So this concludes my presentation of walking through the instructions for case 4, your final case. Congratulations. I'm looking forward to reading your work.